What is up, my dolphins? And before I genuinely begin this video, I want to make a small disclaimer. I do not hate black people. However, this video will be discussing a lot of, stereotypes and stuff. Discussing, well, not necessarily, but regardless, you could still probably interpret it in that kind of sense. Anyway, here's my story about how I was on the Underground Railroad. How old am I? And, well, I'm white. What? So lately I've been thinking about good stories to tell you guys because honestly, stories are like the best thing that a YouTuber could do ever, and I just couldn't really think of too many. But eventually, probably the best story I have under my belt, simply for the fact of how long it is, and just how kind of, in a sense, epic that it is. It's pretty great, It's an awesome story, so if I don't have enough time, I'll even put in the effort of making this a two-parter because this story is something that everyone must experience. So, the Underground Railroad. In case you don't know what the Underground Railroad is, back in pre 1900s America, like before 1865 and all that stuff. Of course, the southern states of America had slaves and stuff, black people, those fine black people. I'm not racist. Um, Basically, they were slaves. That's pretty self-explanatory. Well, back in my ye old fifth grade, uh, we kind of had a big kind of trip coming up called Camp Joy. It was exclusively for fifth graders, which ended up being a lot of fun and stuff. I mean, it was actually insane. It was actually like probably the best field trip I've ever went on because for one, we were there for like 2.5 days. We got cabins and stuff. And yeah. But each year, the teachers kind of pour us a different theme that relates to history based on, whatever we were learning about in a history class. So that year, we had a history teacher, I believe her name was Miss Clayton. And yeah, basically, she proposed the idea of it being about the Underground Railroad because that was the majority of what we were learning about around the time. Like, this field trip was super hype, too. They told us 3 months in advance, like, you need to raise $165 to go. You need to pay us under $65. There are ways that you can get $165, but you're gonna have to put work in for it. I didn't put any work in, but ended up going anyway. So the day we arrived, it was a Tuesday. No, not Tuesday, a Wednesday. So, yeah, I start stressing out because people we had to shove all of our stuff. So I had like a sleeping bag and a pillow and like a big thing of clothes. Well, thing was, people kept dragging my stuff on the ground because it was February and it was rainy and kind of snowy. People just kept kind of dragging my stuff on the ground, so I was kind of stressing out, like, oh my god, it's gonna get dirty. We had gotten there, and yeah, stuff was good. So of course there was a boy cabin and a female cabin. So none of us 11 and 10-year-olds were gonna fuck each other. Yeah, there are two different subsections of each cabin. I don't really know the names of the female ones, but I gotta say the ones for the male category was pretty retarded. It was like Box Overlord, and I'm pretty sure the one that I was in was called Sweet Gum. Thing is, I was put in the section of the cabin where I didn't really have a whole lot of friends. Like, I had a few close friends in my section of the cabin, but my more close friends were in the Box Overlord cabin. Particularly my friend Brandon. Of course, you've met him on the podcast, and a few other people like this guy named Matt, and I believe, pretty sure a guy named Cody. So we start getting settled in. I kind of have an argument with this guy, which one of us was going to get the top bunk. Eventually, I just said fuck it and let him have it. And yeah, things were kind of looking, decent. Eventually, they took us to a kind of mess hall, cafeteria type thing. It was out, sort of stretched out into the woods. And yeah, surprisingly enough, I completely despised, school food. So I was pretty etchy on whether the food there was going to be good or not, and I was actually pretty surprised. They gave us bagels with turkey and cheese and stuff. It was, yeah, it was great. But anyway, yeah, we got assigned to our little groups. I got assigned to the frog group. My god. Why wasn't there a dolphin group? Come on. I get it's not like a woodland critter, but it counts. Eventually, we like learned to make shelters out of like twigs and branches and stuff, and yeah, it was cool. Thing is, I was cold the entire time because I left my coat, and like I said before, it was like right before the middle of February, so but it was fun. Eventually, we got to this like hub area. It was like 9 o'clock. It was a little dark and stuff. It started snowing. There was like a fire that they were trying to keep from going out. They handed out like hot chocolate and stuff, and then we got back to the cabins, and we were like super warm and just like, oh god, I love life. It was actually a really fun time, a really nostalgic time. 3 years ago. Our math teacher, Mr. Clifton, gave us that green glass door, kind of riddle that I still can't figure out the thing to that day. I bet you money you've heard that at least one time. I've heard it about 4 times in my life, and I just never get it. Like, I always get close to getting it, but I just never fully understand it. Anyway, yeah, after being frustrated, I pretended to take a shower because I was lazy. I didn't feel like taking a shower, and I just kind of went to bed. Thing is, they made our, like, time, their, like, kind of curfew, where they just kind of, like, force everyone to go to bed, like, 8:30. So there were two particular kids, like, in this place, like, like in my section of the cabin. To be fair, it's like a fairly small room. Like it's big enough to like fit a bunch of bunk beds in. Like I'm pretty sure there were only like 5 bunk beds in the room, enough to fit like 10 people. The other section had like 10 bunk beds, so yeah, a lot more people. Remember, I come from a small school, so that's basically enough to fit a grade that is only full of like 60 people. About 30 of us being male. Anyway, and not to be off topic. So there was a kid named John, very tall person, obsessed with the military, loves survival and all that stuff. And then there just so happened to be another kid named Mason who was also kind of interested in military stuff and whatnot, and also happened to bring like survival gear that I'm pretty sure never actually became useful. And then there was this other kid that was between them named Gavin. You see, Gavin was the type of kid that just loved to fuck with everyone. Just like would not quit whatsoever. This one guy that was slightly chubby, hopefully he's not watching this, so I won't mention his name. He happened to let out some of the worst farts I've ever heard, and he was dead asleep too, and some of them were kind of fucking disgusting. By the way, the room was significantly bigger than this picture, and there were also a lot more bunk beds. There were about 4 bunk beds on this side. But across from that was like my bed, which was kind of like horizontally laid, while like these are like vertically. Mine was like on the opposite side. So I was on the bottom bunk, and I had a perfect view of everything that was going on. So Gavin thought it would be a good idea to, because like, yeah, it's hard to explain. So like John and Mason, two like military lover kids, had like their military. I use this term loosely. Military backpacks, kind of like hanging off the side of their thing. So yeah, Gavin just kind of snatched both of them, and then yeah. So overall, that kind of pissed John and Mason off, and they took back their shit. But Gavin just so happened to steal one thing from one of the backpacks. I'm not sure whose backpack he stole it from, but Gavin stole a flashlight. About 15 minutes passed because, Mr. Clifton, our green glass door math teacher, walks in and, is like, "You guys better stop, I'm getting kind of pissed off." He did not go into the other section of the cabin, though, that is like, 5 feet away from the door that, leads into our, well, not 5 feet, about like a little less than 10 feet or something. You know, they were like completely loud in there, very. So, yeah. Basically, we all got in trouble and stuff. It's like, oh, on Friday, when we get back to the freaking school, you guys are all gonna have detention if you keep it up. So, yeah. So 15 minutes after that, Gavin, stole a flashlight, as revealed. And he starts shining it at people, shining it up at the wall. At this point, I'm still wide awake because I'm still pissed off at Mr. Clifton because for some reason he decided to focus his fire on me. I was completely just sitting there doing nothing. I was wide awake though, so I guess he assumed that I was the culprit because everyone else was pretending to be dead asleep. And everyone's just yelling at him, like, "Gavin, you fucking quit. You're being a dick. No one likes you. Stop." Mr. Clifton comes in again, blah blah blah. Eventually, I find my way to sleep. At this point, we actually get to do stuff that does relate to slavery. So my frog group finally gets taken over to this kind of plantation-looking place. They say, oh, it's about 30 acres. It's like nothing huge. I think they either said like 30, 40, anything between like 30 and 60. I can't necessarily remember. But yeah, it was a little small kind of farm. It wasn't really a farm, actually. It was just kind of like a bunch of, like sets of just kind of like plants and stuff. Thing is, they're kind of like squad leader was like this short blonde chick. That was actually pretty cool. She was like in her early 20s. She was nice. She was nice. My guess at the time she was probably like 23. So yeah, we get there and basically we just kind of get taken to a little petting zoo behind this big house with the plantation and all that. We eventually get taken inside the house. It's pretty small. It's 2 floors surprisingly, even though the second floor is just the attic. Yeah. But yeah, this house is going to become important later when we start getting into the juicy stuff. Okay. That was pretty cool because there were 2 goats there that she liked, to call Yoda and Master Chief, so I fairly appreciated that. Everyone else was like, Halo, gay. Fucking COD players. That was the only day there that we actually got all 3 meals because, we arrived around lunchtime on the first day, and on the last day, we just kind of we're gonna leave after lunchtime. So yeah, we eat chicken at dinner and stuff, and all of a sudden, I get very surprised because the full kind of course of this huge Camp Joy trip finally gets to commence. So, they all start handing us out bandanas. Just kind of like little handkerchiefs, nothing really that special. But they make it very clear to us. If you get nervous or scared at all, take the bandana off and put it around your neck instead of around your head. At that point, you're just gonna be kind of like a spectator. I mean, from the outside looking in, you'll no longer be participating in what we will be doing. I said, okay, interesting enough, because I was a retard at the time. I had to have someone, help me actually put the thing around my head. So, yeah, me and my friends were all in a circle laughing because this one, kid had his in, like, the shape of, like, the KKK type thing pointing up, which was kind of horribly ironic because the type of thing we were participating in. So, yeah. We're gonna start off the second part. Well, clearly this is going to be put into 2 videos because honestly, there's just way too much to be talking about because this is going to be awesome. Something I'm going to love to share with you guys. A video I'll really like to be able to show my friends and stuff like, hey, remember when we did that? So yeah, I'm probably going to be uploading both these videos in the same day because I'm really excited to share with you guys because it's a really awesome story. One that I'm particularly fond of. So I will see you in the next video. Stay wet. 13 minutes sharp.